Frollo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frollo app is the one for you. The Frollo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frollo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frollo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frollo, search for Frollo, Frollo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frollo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frollo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frollo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. This season of the Frollo podcast features a series of conversations that include wisdom and guidance from some of the wonderful experts and single parents that feature in our book. If you could just tell us a bit about who you are and a bit about yourself, that would be amazing.
Of course. My background is that I was an actress for a long time, and I started acting when I was very, very young. So I was just 11 when I started acting, and I always thought I would be an actress, and I always thought that would be my world. And as I got older, I signed to Sony for a time. I was on TV shows. So I was on a TV show called Biker Grove, which was on in the UK at the time when I was younger, and I was on that for 7 years. So I grew up on television, so always had a platform. Before there was platforms, so I think like now everybody, like my kids couldn't give a shit whether I was on TV. It's just so irrelevant. Like they're like, so what? Everyone's got a TV channel. Everyone's got a YouTube. Like everyone's got TikTok. Whereas when we were growing up, that was kind of a big deal to be on TV. And so I grew up with all of that, and then always thought that would be my world. As I then became a mom when I was 26, I was juggling, and obviously I was with my husband at the time, and we were juggling being very entrepreneurial people. We always worked for ourselves. So outside of acting, I was always doing other things, whether that was modeling or selling T-shirts or literally everything. We were never not on some hustle somewhere doing something to not have to work for anybody else. There was always that, and I haven't had a proper job. Like it's never been, or if it's been like I worked in a pub when I was at drama school, it was always kind of like a thing that I did. Like it wasn't ever any longevity in it. There was always lots going on. When I met my husband, he was very much the same, and he was chaotic and like would do lots of things. And before we had kids, that was like fine. And then when we had kids, that was more of a juggling match, because we were just like constantly doing it. We were trying to initially do the same thing but with kids, but then sharply realized how naive and how sweet we were to think that could happen. And it was obviously like lots of juggling with that. And then I kind of went into the world of self-development. I'd always done it. I'd always done self-development for myself. So because I was on TV as a kid for such a long time, I felt it was challenging. Like that was challenging in a time when there was no platform for people, when people weren't on TV. So it was a big deal going to a normal working class school, normal area. I had to deal with the same shit everybody dealt with, the same body image stuff, the same, and for me, a lot of my stuff early on, a lot of my issues with myself were around how I looked. So I had really bad like body dysmorphia, and I thought I was the ugliest thing you've ever seen. And that was probably because if we look back, I was getting my makeup done 6 months of the year, somebody correcting my faults on my face, and my body was talked about with the size of it, or, whatever. And I was very, very skinny, and I was really small. and I just hated it, whatever end of the spectrum. And so I was dealing with all of this stuff in my own world, and I didn't want to feel shit. I didn't want to feel like that. And, we didn't obviously have the access to stuff like we do now. So I remember going to the library and like looking at books on like how to be happy and like how to build your confidence and all of that stuff. And I think initially I was looking at Paul McKenna's like hypnosis CDs. It was probably a tape actually. And I was like listening to stuff and trying to feel better. And actually it's funny now that a lot of the techniques I use was stuff I was doing when I was 11 and 12. I just didn't know it had a name. I was just finding my way and experimenting. Well, if I do this weird shit, maybe that will make me feel a bit better. So it was always there, but it was in the background. It was something for me to get through being an actor and the rejection of that and the eyes on of that. And then my husband was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2014. And I had 2 daughters at the time. The girls would have been, Texas was 1 and Brooke was nearly 3. So actually in retrospect, looking back on that, I'm like, shit, they were really young. They were babies. At the time, there was no like, I guess, there was no factoring in of that. I was just like, well, I just had to get on with it. And I didn't really consider the added element of that because I didn't ever feel incapable of those things. Like I never felt, and at the time Ross was there. So like he was alive. I mean, yes, we were dealing with stuff, but he was there. For 3.5 years, Ross had brain cancer, and we went through all of the rounds of brain surgeries, chemos, all of the stuff that goes with that. Our roles as a result of that shifted, and I knew, regardless of hope and wanting things to be different, I knew that there was an inevitability that at some point I'd be doing it on my own. I had that in the back of my mind. Even if you don't really want to fully allow that space, I'm not fucking stupid. And this was grade 4 rare brain cancer. And both Ross and I were very direct in our approach to life. Ross had autism. I've got ADHD. Our directness ran through it. We just got on with stuff. And Ross would say, they tell me I've got brain cancer. I can't fucking feel it. It could be full of shit. Like, I don't know. And we lived like that. And for a lot of people, that's really uncomfortable conversation, but we just dealt with life like that. And so we had the awkward conversations, the uncomfortable conversations about when Ross would die. And we did, and believe me, they were not nice conversations. And I did not want to have those conversations. But I also knew that if I didn't, there would be words left unsaid, and there would be things that I should have known or done. And Ross died in 2017 of brain cancer. And from before that, I already was beginning to be a single parent. Although Ross was there, and it was very quick near the end. For other people, it probably felt like it was a long time because they were thinking, well, he was like nearly 4 years of cancer. So it feels like we didn't live like that. Ross still played a very important role. He was a very hands-on dad. And both Ross and I were always together. Like, we were always around each other. The kids grew up with 2 people that liked each other. And, they were very, very young when Ross died. They were 4 and 6. But their early years were Ross and I in the house all the time. Ross and I picking them up from school often together. We were always there. There was not. And so he was there and then he wasn't. And that was really jarring for the girls. Obviously, there was so much change in their worlds. For me, on the lead up to Ross's death, I think I had accepted and mentally prepared as best you can for that I was going to be doing this on my own. And so even like in the last year of his life, we knew it was prolonging. We knew it wasn't curative. And so I was doing things in a way of, can I fucking cope with this? Will I be able to do this? And I always knew that. I mean, I never doubted that I could. That wasn't a consideration. I never doubted that I could. I'm a capable person and I've always been independent. So that never scared me. I don't think the reality of being a single parent can hit you until you're a single parent all the time. As you know, until you're a single parent all the time and all of the responsibilities are yours, that's when it hits. And in those first few years of Ross's after Ross died, everyone wants to be around, obviously. And not that that's to say that I wanted people around or let them, because I didn't also want that. There was always for me that understanding that I had to do it on my own. I had to work out what it felt like. And I almost didn't, and this might not be for everybody, I didn't want the cushion. I didn't want it. I wanted to understand. I wanted to find my rhythm. So even like the day after Ross's funeral, I took the kids to Butlins on my own. And literally, I mean, poor Butlins, they were very lovely. But I rang them and I'd had a voucher for ages for like some money. And I was like, just get me there. I'll pay whatever. Just like, I want like I'm not in the cheap seats. And I want the fucking poshest lodge, fucking whatever you've got, because it's not for them. I want to be in that. I'm not in some minging chalet in Butlins. I'm not being snobby. I don't care if I am, actually. I didn't want it. I wanted posh. It was the day after his funeral. I was like, I just want to be nice. And Butlins were brilliant, and they didn't have space, and they found space, and they were brilliant. But everyone around me freaked out because they were like, oh, she's going to be able to cope on her own. She's not going to be able to do it. She's not going to be able to. And I was like, I'll be fine. I might cry. I might find it difficult, but I'll be fine. And I need to do that. And we needed to find our feet. And that's kind of how we've been since Ross's death. And self-development work for me kind of happened while Ross was dying and had brain cancer and all of that. I couldn't do acting because I couldn't, and I didn't want to either. It wasn't just I couldn't, I didn't want to. I came home, Ross got brain cancer. I was set to do a film. I just finished doing BBC Casualty. There was a lot of noise around that because there was some quite good episodes that I'd done. So there were a lot of people wanted me to come and be booked on their jobs. And I rang my agent and was just like, just not stop it all. I'm not bothered. I don't care. And I didn't care. And I haven't really gained that care back, which was very weird because before that it was all acting. I was so driven towards that space, but it just shifted. And self-development came very organically. One, because I was talking about this stuff and I've done it for such a long time. And so that made it, it was just natural. And then when Ross died, there was a lot of press around Ross's death. And because of that, a lot of people were messaging me and going, how are you doing the stuff? Like, how are you dealing with it? And it just didn't feel enough to be like some shit, like one line Facebook message. It's not enough. Like that doesn't give you anything. So I initially created the Happy Me project as a standalone course that people could do, just like a self-study course. I put together 21 days of audios, videos, a workbook, the bare bones of what I would do to not lose my shit is essentially what I was putting it together as. Put it out in the world, no fancy launch strategy, just do that. It's 30 quid. Like if you want to do it, that's what I do. And it just got legs, and I started doing workshops. I did workshops around the country, and they were selling out wherever I went. And I just realized that there was a need for somebody like me who can talk about it in a real way and take the fancy out of it, take the complicated out of it. And people could hear it from me because they had visually seen that I had been through something that was hard, and they could listen to it, they could hear it more. Whereas actually in a weird way, before Ross's death and Ross having cancer, I don't think people would have listened in the same way, because who the fuck am I with, some bird with all our makeup on and like, whatever. Like I understood that. Whereas after Ross's death, there was almost an understanding that I was in the trenches as well. Like, I get it. Like, it's shit sometimes.
What was your kind of, when Ross died, and you say about kind of going to Butlins the next day, but yeah, what were your kind of, and obviously the Happy Me project came from that. That was what sounds like your coping strategy that is now helping so many others. What would your advice be to like a single parent in that same situation who maybe has lost someone in the same way or a similar way as you have, in terms of like, what are the kind of, I don't know, top things for them to be able to focus on to get them through those first days, weeks or months?
Yeah. First, it's when he's saying this because we're asking for like advice, but my first bit of advice would be to listen to yourself, like, and turn down the noise of how everybody else thinks it should be for you, because there's an awful lot of opinions when you go through something like that, and people put on you what they think they would do in that situation. And a lot of that is pure fear and not being and looking from the outside in, and not understand that when you're in it, you have to deal with it how that feels good to you. Now, what I did might be completely alien to somebody else. It might not be suited. For some people, they're going to have their partner die, and all they're going to want to do is be wrapped up around other people and supported and need help. And that's perfectly valid. That's perfectly fine. And it's not wrong if it feels right to you. It might be more like me, where it was, I need to find that acceptance and that understanding on my own, and I need to work it out without anybody else around. That was my way of dealing with it. I think firstly, it's really sit with yourself for a minute and go, what do I need? And don't judge what that is. It might be, I need everyone to take every job from me and help the fuck out and make me food and do my washing, and I just want to hide away. That's okay. Or it might be completely the opposite. It might be, we're going to move house. We're going to do everything different. I'm going to shave my head. Like it really is about firstly listening to what you really need without everybody else's noise. Then I would say really look at what you're allowing into your space. I was so protective of that space right then, in terms of who's allowed in my house, who's allowed near me, whose opinions am I willing to let in right now, what do I watch, what do I read, what do I see on social media, because I knew in those moments that there was literally no more space for me to go down any further. Like I knew I'm at a point where like I'm keeping myself above, I'm just floating here. I'm just above the water. So if I have somebody else's shit opinion come in, I'll fucking sink. If I start watching the news and I start getting embroiled in what's happening in some depressing storyline, I'm going to sink. I'm not going to have the headspace to cope with that. On top of that, there's too much going on. So I became ruthless with what I would allow into my space. And I think that's very important. And also reminding people that the boundaries that you might hear somebody like me talk about, the boundaries that we can put in place, when you go through something like that, you can be ruthless and no one will give a shit and everyone will give you a pass. So if ever there is a time when you want to be really brutal with that dickhead family member that just is negative, you just go, no one's allowed round to my house now. And everyone goes, oh, sad though, isn't she? That's okay. Or you can also use it as a time to go, can everybody do my washing and make my tea? And people will do that as well. So there are benefits in that. They can really help you to create boundaries you didn't put in place before, because ultimately when we go through something difficult, nothing can really hurt more than that in that moment. So somebody's twisting of their face because I've said no, or somebody's like discomfort because I've said something really direct, my husband's dead and that feels worse. So actually there's some benefit in those moments, but protecting your space and being really honest with what you need. And also I would say as well, like if you need help, let people help, because if you are, that is very hard for a lot of us, particularly those that are like really independent. It's hard to ask for help, but reminding yourself people want to help, like that's their way of coping. You know, you using the example of me doing what I do as a way to help, but also helping myself. That's absolutely right. It's a help high. Remember that those on the outskirts of your situation are looking in with horror. They want to help. And when you go, can you get me a bottle of milk? They're like, oh, thank God, somewhere to put it, somewhere to put my pain and my worry about you. I can get the milk. I can fucking get the milk.
Yeah.
People want to help. Like they want somewhere to put it, whether it's death or whether it's anything, people do want to help. And it was actually Ross who taught me that, because when Ross had radiotherapy, he was having radiotherapy every day for, I don't know, a month or so. And it was in Birmingham, which is a good half an hour from where we live. And it was every day, 2 kids at school, separate school times. It was a lot. And hyper independent me was like, oh, I can do it all. I'll do it fucking all. I'll do everything. And Ross was like, let people help. Like, let's schedule. And he created a schedule to let other people drive him to the appointments. And he was like, I'm gifting them that. They want to help.
Yeah.
Honestly. it really switched that round in my head, because I was like, that is true. Like, whether it's, being a single parent because of being a widow or because you've had a relationship breakup, those tough times, people are watching and they they care about you and they want to do something. And even, in those early stages, I didn't really want to do that, and I didn't really need it. That wasn't really something that I needed. Yeah. But I would almost give people fake jobs I didn't need them to do.
When you talk about that hyper independence, I think that's something that I really relate to, and I'm sure lots of single parents relate to, because it can become almost like a defense mechanism, right? It's like, I have to have everything under control, therefore I'm not asking for help, I'm not letting people help me. How, obviously, with the death of a partner, that's something that, while you do have, you had some time to plan for that, but there's lots of things that you have to address that must be completely alien, finances, legals. How did you go about addressing those things, and who did you turn to for help in those things? Because, there's going to be people that they're maybe not prepared and they don't have time to think about those things. So what advice would you give to them on those kind of topics?
I really recognize where my strengths lie and where they don't. So finances and stuff, I'm good at hoarding money. Ross was good at, his autistic obsession was money. So he would he knew all the bank accounts, he knew all of everything. That really is not my comfort zone at all. I'm good at keeping on top of it once it's done and it's there, but I don't enjoy that. And that was really difficult. Ross also had property. So we had five properties, rental properties. The stress of that was fucking horrendous. I don't understand why, as human beings, we all know that somebody around us is going to die, and yet we make the process of death really hard. It's unbelievably hard. I would, mortgage companies, dealing with all of that was incredibly difficult. So I was lucky enough that I could turn to Ross's mum. She's very good in terms of the number side of stuff and has her own property, so understood that. I spoke to my accountant more and lent on them more. I don't understand that stuff. So I recognize, and it's definitely something, you're absolutely right. You want to be able to do everything. But I think in those moments, whether it's a relationship breakup or a death, or when you suddenly have to take on a role that you didn't ask for, you didn't necessarily think you were going to have to, or maybe you knew it was coming, but you hadn't really anticipated how difficult that would be. I think it's recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses, and not necessarily seeing it as a weakness, because weakness sounds like a very potent word, but going, it's okay that I'm not good at everything. We often hear, don't we, the affirmation, I am enough. And I often may use that, but the truth is we're not enough. We're not enough to do everything. We think we have to be. I'm enough, I can do all. We can't. We simply can't. So I think, again, it goes back to that really uncomfortable, vulnerable space of going, this is not my strong point and I need someone to explain it to me. And I think I got more and more comfortable with being uncomfortable with that. And I did that prior to Ross a little bit as well, but going, I don't know what that means. And having no discomfort with, I don't know what that word means and I don't understand it. And if I really can't understand, so I'm really not great at maths. I've tried my hardest. I'm just not good at it. So there's no point me spending all of my time shaming myself with, you're not good at that though. How shit are you? Why can't you just cope with it? It doesn't do anything. Shame never helped anybody. So what I do is I reach out to people who are smarter than me in that area. And I think that's probably the preparation that I did, was recognizing my strengths and weaknesses and reaching out to people. So I was lucky enough to have a few people around me, but it could be that professionally you look at professionals that can help you, or you reach out to support communities and you have those spaces. That wasn't necessarily something I felt comfortable with. It didn't really work for me, but there was a lot of people reaching out to me. There's charities such as Widowed and Young, which is a charity for young widows, I think under 50. And I've done some work with them. I don't love that, because in those communities, I will slip into helper mode and I won't get in a bigger, wider scale. It doesn't feel comfortable for me. People rely on me then, and then I can't lean on that. So I didn't love that. But I think for some people that's brilliant, and having those safe spaces to go, I don't get it, or I don't understand, was really helpful. And that's why when you're talking about, this book and everything, I think That's so important, because there are so many areas where we're embarrassed to say, I don't understand it. But we often, especially in relationships, have roles. And they're not always the traditional roles, but often they are. And that's okay. We need to stop shaming women that is the case. Like, Ross was better at maths and more analytical stuff. He had autism. He loved fucking all that shit. I hate it. And that was difficult for me, because in terms of that neurodiversity, Ross and I balanced each other out, because I'm like jumping from one thought to the next and want to go fast. Ross would want to like read the instructions and not break the things like I would do. And we balanced each other. So when Ross wasn't there, my symptoms of ADHD were actually worse, because I was like, all the chaos was back, and which was interesting, because it was that dynamic of it shifted. So that was very interesting as well.
And how do you kind of hold your children in that period in between? Because obviously, as much as there's lots of things you need to sort out logistically and financially and legally, obviously your first thought is how do I make sure the kids are okay? So what would you say to people in that situation?
So again, they were my priority, because these are little people. They were 4 and 6. The one thing I did with the girls always, and again, this is very instinctual, but then I also did research on it prior to Ross's death. I wanted to prepare and kind of look for what is the help on offer for them. So I definitely did do that and looked for, counselling, when is the best time. Like, I didn't know all of that stuff when it comes to children. And the one thing that I did was, they can ask me anything and no questions are off limits. No matter how many times I have to say it, no matter how painful it is to me, they have to have space to have their feelings, and they have to have space to be angry, sad, want to break things, swear, whatever. And I did understand that. And a lot of people around me felt really uncomfortable with that, in that they didn't want to have those conversations. Like, I told the girls Ross was going to die while Ross was still alive, and was just about able to not make it weird, because obviously with it being brain, that was difficult, because after a time it's a brain injury, so it's like talking to somebody with dementia. So the time when I told them, he probably didn't fully understand, but he didn't say anything weird, and they were able to know. And then everyone around me felt really uncomfortable with me having those conversations, because they weren't in an acceptance place. I kind of had to be, so I had to deal with that, and I had to deal with the fact Ross and I were together all the time. There was no pretending Ross wasn't there. Like, it was somewhere else. So he was at work. We were together all the time. So the minute Ross died, or the minute Ross got sick and went into a hospice, my partner in crime was not there. And it was no denial of that. And the same with the kids. We literally moved when Ross died, Texas was starting school for the first time. The girls moved schools. We had a different car. We moved house. Everything was different. So there was no pretense. So with the girls, I gave them space. We talked, and I let them ask everything. And they asked everything from, how do you know he's died? How did you know he had died? Like, what did he look like? What did he have a smell? Like, was he like, what did he feel like? What did he say? And we still repeat this stuff. There are still times, the girls are now 11 and 9. And there are still times when I have to have that same conversation again. It's not comfortable for me. A lot of the conversations haven't been. There are things, I remember early stages, my wedding ring, which I still wear, and I don't have an issue with that. And I suppose that gives fuck off vibes to anybody that wants to date me. But equally, you're dating me, you're taking on all of it. So to me, it's no like different to a tattoo. I just wear it. I don't notice I've got it on. But on here is 3 diamonds. Wasn't actually purposeful, but I did say to the girls after, it's you, Dad, it's you 2 and Dad. And I kind of added that on. But when Ross died, Brooke straight away, their little brains are whirring, and she was like, do you need to take a diamond out of there now? And like a dagger through the heart for me. I'm like, it's awful, but I'm like, no, darling, and we talked about it. But these are the kind of things kids will say, can he come back? We've had lots of conversations about afterlife. And for them, I've always let them lead. You tell me what you believe, because what I believe is what I believe, but it's not what you might believe, and nobody really knows. So you can believe whatever you want. And I've always said that. And in those early stages, we had things like we had, I mean, Texas was 4, Brooke was 6, or Brooke was right and Texas wasn't. So I would say to them, if you want to talk and you don't want to say it to me, you can use my phone and you can do me a video or a voice note. They both knew how to do that. And I'll watch it if you want, but you don't have to. I won't if you don't want me to. They always did because they were young. They had get it out books, so they would write anything down in that they wanted to get out of their head. And I said to them, you can write swear words, you can write angry things about me or dad, anything in there, and I will not look at that, and there's no judgment of that unless you want me to, but you can write anything. And sometimes we feel angry, and sometimes we're angry at dad. Why did he have to die? That's a piss take. And I've always been very direct, even in my swearing and stuff with the girls, because that language is important when you're talking about that stuff, because they feel that level of like strength of word. Texas once had a teacher at school, when she said her dad had died, she was probably about 6. And when she'd said her dad had died, this teacher, was like a helper teacher, had said, oh, that's not very nice. That's sad. And Texas came home and told me, and I was like, that's not very nice. Like, not very nice is when you drop an ice cream. That is not very nice. Like, your dad's dead is fucking shit. Like, you can't. And so the girls were allowed space for that, obviously with consequence. Like, if I said to them, I would say to them, you can say this in your bedroom, you can say this with me, you go and say that at school, there's a consequence. You're not allowed to do that outside of here, but there is space for it in here. If you're mad, I would let them punch pillows or scream into pillows if they felt that emotion and they needed to get it out. I just tried to give space to it, because you and I know that when we're sad, we feel like screaming, or we do scream, or we swear, or we get pissed off. But with children, people just want to paper over it and go, children are so resilient, so quiet, so resilient. And it's like, well, that's a real nice, neat package for yourself. But actually, my kids have been extremely angry at times, extremely destructive, and have said the worst things possible to me. They've wished I was dead. They've hated me. I'm the worst. I wish dad was alive and you were dead. These are not conversations that we want to talk about, because it's all like, oh, we must have done something wrong. No, they've just got feelings that are really big and they don't know what to do with them. And that is what it is. So I think in those, whether it's early stages, I think it's, you have to be brave enough as the parent. And this is uncomfortable, because you need to lean on someone else, not your kids. You need to go to see a therapist, a coach, a great family member, your older neighbor. You need to lean on someone else. But your kids in those moments, as hard as it is, need to be able to go, Mom, I'm really sad, or I'm really angry. And there's other things we did as well at school, because school was a big challenge, particularly for Brooke, that you go into school and you're expected to sit at your desk and be fine. And there's no, like, I don't feel fine. And so we used to do, I had a piece of paper she would take to school, or a notepad, and she would mark on it a blue line if she'd been sad, a moment of sadness, a red line if she'd been angry. And then at the end of the day, she could show me that, and she could show the teacher, and I could go, wow, look, you held all that in today. Like, you held all that sadness and all that anger. Wow, that's tough, man. That must have been such a tough day. What should we do? Do you want to talk about it? Maybe they didn't. Do you want to go and eat some nice food? Do you want to sing? Like, whatever. Like, do you want to do anything with that? But it was something tangible, because otherwise, how the hell do I quantify what she's felt at school that day? So we did loads of things like that, but it was just giving space and not shutting down their feelings is my best advice to people.
On the kind of flip side of that, obviously, I know I'm guilty of this, and I know Zoe is as well. Sometimes how single parents make themselves feel okay is by looking after the kids, and is by focusing on the kids. And it's kind of like, that's obviously great to an extent. But what do you do to kind of make sure that you're prioritizing your own self-care and really looking after yourself as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I do that as well. And I certainly am not, and don't, when I'm working with my clients, it's not about just you are only a mom, because I don't think that's helpful either at all. And it's hiding. It's kind of hiding away. It's hiding your own feelings behind your children. So I definitely don't do that. One of the things we did from the very beginning is I said to the kids, sometimes one of us will be feeling like this, and sometimes one of us will be feeling like this. Sometimes we'll all feel the same, but we have to give space to that. That includes me. So I've always been very open about my own feelings, my kids, and I don't mean in like a burden type of way, but if I'm sad, or if I'm feeling grief, or I've had a tough day, I will say, I'm feeling really sad today, and this is why. Or I'll often describe it when I'm at home. I'll say, I'm at my limit. So I'm at a 10 right now already. So you need to give me space. And I do just create space for that. And I think, again, it's those open conversations. There's always the balance of not wanting to burden your children. But equally, I found that initially my way of coping was just to crack on. And I don't mean denying, I was crying in my own space and I was like dealing with it, but wasn't really doing that in front of the kids. And that almost gave them the impression that everybody's moved on, everyone's fine all of the time. And so there was initial where I almost felt like I had to like deliberately cry in front of them so they knew that it was okay. But I think for myself, it's just been a case of, I understand I'm a woman outside of being a mom. Like, I'm an actual human being. I'm not just the mom. And often people will say to you, if you're a widow as well, you will often get the sort of the tried and tested tropes of like what people say to people who, when someone's died, but they'll say like, oh, well, I bet the kids get you through. And I'm like, are you fucking joking me? Like, those little shits make it hard. I love them, the little cretins. But no, I'm not just getting through. I wouldn't have just given up and died if I didn't have the kids. As a human being, as a woman, I'm a really hopeful person. And Ross and I were very direct. So, it is what it is. Like, he's died. I can't do anything about that. And he'd be absolutely fuming if I gave up. And it wouldn't be, in my mind, honouring his death if I just went, well, that's me done then. If it hadn't been for if those kids weren't there, I'd just kill myself. I wouldn't. And I know that's not everybody's experience, but I think my kids know, and we've had, again, it's the open conversations where maybe I'm parenting in a way I didn't expect to parent, which I think is the case for a lot of single parents. I know that when people come into our chaos, because our home is chaotic, I know people are like, fucking hell. But equally, it's what we've had to do. You know, like there's plenty of times, I'm sure, before having kids that have been given it the old, they will never have their iPads. Oh my God, they will never do this. And we will recite Latin before breakfast or some bullshit story I was telling myself. And then you become an actual parent and you realize that was all bullshit and you will have to sometimes. Then you become a single parent and you realize you're just going to sometimes have to do what you have to do to get through. Like yesterday, it was my birthday. My oldest is autistic and has severe anxiety, although you would not necessarily know that until, like a lot of autistic kids, they're autistic, they mask well until they don't. Well, because it was my birthday yesterday, again, as a single parent, that becomes quite a big deal, birthdays, because my kids, it's the first year they've said, we don't want anybody to help us. We've got our own money and we want to do something for your birthday, which was a really big step and really sweet. But they've been planning it a long time. And for an autistic child, the planning needs to go to plan, right? So she's prepared yesterday. And I'm like, already I can feel the anxiety for her because I know it's not going to necessarily go that way. It obviously didn't. It was a shit show. And one was going off, the other one's going off. So I think one's calmed down and the other one's fucking gone off. And it was an absolute chaos of crying. Not sure how I managed to maintain my calm yesterday, which is very unlike me, but I did. By the end of it, it was 9:00 last night. There was a rave going on in my kitchen. Everybody was eating sweets. And people were up till 10:30 last night. Not ideal. Didn't think I would have to parent like that, but sometimes you have to. It's not ideal. They're 11 and 9. But equally, when you're a single parent, you do have what you do to get through all of that stuff. And sometimes you have to. So, digressed off the topic, but I think it's been mostly like, I let my kids know when I'm sad. I let my kids know when I'm okay, when I'm okay. I let my kids know those feelings. And we've even talked about relationships and things like that. And I've told them where I'm at with that and how I feel, which is I'm completely open to that. I'm not caught in it right now. I'm not dating, although I can't even think of anything worse than that, quite frankly. Like, that does not appeal to me, going on like dating apps and all of that. I can't think of anything worse. But equally, that's not their issue and that's not because of them. That's how I feel about things. And they know that will be a conversation down the line. And I think all of that, even financially as well, I talk to my kids about that. We talk about money. We talk about, I run my own business. Sometimes they have to deal with stuff while I'm doing a meeting, and that's part of the balance, and there isn't somebody to tag us out. There isn't somebody to, you know, when the kids are kicking off, when I'm on a meeting, it's just me going, fuck's sake, fucking sit down, off the screen like that. Sit down. Okay. Just that, a lot of that going on, because that's what has to happen. But I think, yeah, I just give space to it. And I think even as a person in general, I allow my chaos to be. I don't think that would be my advice to anyone anyway. Know what your chaos is, know what your own triggers are. And whether it's being a widow, being a single parent, or just being a normal adult without anything else going on, if you know what your own stuff is and you own the good, the bad and the ugly, then everything else works around that.
Completely.
Embrace the chaos.
Embrace the chaos. Exactly. We need to get t-shirts with embrace.
And just high five any other single parent you see, just high five them and let them know how.
Well, that's why. But that's why I think we all, as single parents, there's just, you know, typically such an immediate like respect and empathy because of that like chaos that we all know too well, and just that, you know, it is chaos, but it's so lovely to, just hear from you, such an honest, kind of open, like, you know, your story, and like you just sound like an incredible mother, and you know, your ability just to create that space and honesty for your kids, and your kind of positivity and resilience and prioritizing kind of self-care, and through the Happy Me project helping others as well. Like, it's really, really admirable.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frollo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frollo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frollo.com, or follow us on Instagram at Frollo app. My co-host on this series of the Frollo podcast and co-author of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent, Rebecca Cox, is on Instagram at Single Mother Edit. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.